All right. So again, thank you and welcome everyone to Professional Perspectives. Tonight, I'm really happy to introduce a dear friend of mine, actually. And I know more about him probably personally than I do about his business. So I'm really eager to ask him a lot of questions. For those of you who are new, Anita and I will ask questions for about a half an hour or so. And then we will open it up for the audience to ask their questions. So I'm thinking it's over 10 years that Lon and I met. So he actually was at a different company then. He was with Kimberly Clark. You may or may not have heard of Kimberly Clark in India. And since then he has changed companies, and we're going to let him tell us about the change in profession. But he has a lovely, lovely wife and 2 daughters. And I went to Facebook to find a picture of him and his daughters, and the picture's about 10 years old. So I won't show you the picture, but Lon, how old are Mona and London?
Mona is 11 years old and London is 10 years old.
Okay.
And an interesting fact is that Mona, I may be stealing your thunder, Mona and Vicky share the same birthday. And so that's very exciting.
She's a little bit younger than me.
Just a little bit, just a little bit.
We're both on May 2nd. And actually, London was a baby when we first met. So yes, it has been about 10 years since we first met. And Lon's wife is a lawyer. So they are both professionals and in 2 different fields. So thank you, Lon, for joining us today. And in front of us are mostly students, a couple of teachers, and I want to start actually with a question about your degrees. So I'm trying to remember where the spotlight is. Spotlight you. There you are, Lon, you're spotlighted.
There you go.
And so here's my first question to start us off this evening. You have a bachelor's degree in health sciences and a master's degree in business. And because I also have I have a bachelor's degree in business and a master's degree in education, and I'm really curious about the blending of those 2 degrees. And my question is, did you start off, when you started your bachelor's, did you have this career plan? And if not, how did you get into having these 2 different kinds of degrees? And tell us a little bit how you got started in working in marketing.
Yeah, no, for sure. And again, thank you everyone for having me. I've been looking forward to this for a while, so good evening to all of you. I'll tell you this, when I first got my original degree, more of a healthcare related degree, I really had no intention of getting into marketing or product management. I thought I wanted to be a physical therapist, actually. My brother encouraged me to go into physical therapy, and I started down that path, and then I went and I got a volunteer role in a local physical therapy clinic, and spent a couple days there, and I realized I really don't like this. But and it was not because of the lack of passion or just being able to throw yourself in the people. The people were great. It just wasn't what I wanted to do long term. And so, but I realized that shortly thereafter that even though I have a degree in one thing, it doesn't stop me from changing directions later on. But I needed sort of a pivotal point to do that. And getting a master's degree a few years later was the ability to change direction and go into more of a business type of role. And so just prior to that, I graduated my undergrad degree, performance sciences, went into sales, and really found myself wanting to influence what the sales team was selling, but I didn't, because I didn't have the ability to, get to corporate office, right, and talk about, hey, corporate office, I need you guys to change some things. And so that's what prompted me to want to go into product management, thus going and getting an MBA and then really pursuing that path. And that's where I am today. And maybe it's a little bit of wanting to be in charge, Vicki and Anita, I'm not sure, but that's where I ended up pursuing.
All right. Anita?
Yeah, yes. I was actually waiting. So it takes a lot to realize basically that this is not what I'm cut out for, and I'd rather move to something else. And the fact that you got the opportunity to do it and then you moved, was the transition smooth, and did you need to actually transfer to another location or things? How did your career then progress?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. It was very, very rushed for me because at the point that I saw an opportunity to go to graduate school, I think I applied 2 days before the application was due. And I had a great, very short but great career in sales. And I was able to, at that point, save just enough money for the first year or part of the first year of graduate school. And so when I realized I wanted to do it, there was a local school that still had, the deadline had not passed. I quickly applied. I tried to track down some people that I knew and who were there, and I talked to them about it. And so the transition, I did not have to relocate. I would have, but I didn't have to in this case. And the transition was really interesting because I'd gone from working, very hard in a sales career to going back to school full time. So that transition of graduating undergrad, going to the workforce for several years, and then leaving the workforce and going back to school was an interesting one. And it was a risk, going back to a place, no job. And, I really had to bet on myself at that point. And I said, I really know what I'm doing. This is the right thing to do. And I'm going to go ahead and really take that leap of faith, if you will, to do it. And it really worked out. It was one of the best decisions I made at that point. And I have no regrets. Maybe I probably wish I had done it a little bit sooner, but and I'll tell you this, having a master's degree is great. I don't know if everyone in all cases needs a master's degree to have a successful career. It's really use the degree to get you to the point that where you want to go, right? That's really the path. And everyone's path, I'll tell you, is different and unique. And so you should look at, you should always look at where do you actually want to get to and what degree or educational experience or internship or work experience will get you there. And that's what I did.
We're talking about the other students. Let's go ahead, but sometimes we save this for the end, but this is so interesting because I have a couple of questions. One, first I want to ask, do you love change? I mean, you've changed degrees and you've changed jobs. Just 5 years ago, you changed jobs. And are you a person that, like, I love change? Do you love change?
I'm not a fan of too much change all the time. I'll be candid with you. I appreciate a little bit of stability because it allows me the opportunity to go really deep into the field that I'm in and really try to pick it apart and understand the drivers of it. So I'm not a constant change type of person, but every so often though, but I'm not afraid of it. That's the key. There was a book called Who Moved My Cheese? I don't know if you remember that. It was
in my ability class. I do. Yes.
There you go. So I read that book, and I realized some things about myself that although, whether you have a desire for constant change or not, you should look forward to the amazing things that change will bring and the opportunities that will come out of it. And so, because there's always an opportunity whenever there's change, whether it's corporate change, whether it's personal change, there's always an opportunity in there for you. I do believe that. And if you go into it very, oh no, it's changing, and versus it's changing, let's go see what's next for me and what am I going to do. You'll be in a very, very different mindset. You just have to change your mindset. But I don't like daily change, to answer your question, Vicky, or weekly. I think it doesn't allow you to go as deep as I would like to be. But I embrace it when it comes, and I've always had an opportunity to do something really, really fun
And
when a
does
change has come to me.
the change in society and change in the world, is that relevant to the kind of work that you do?
It is. I mean, it being now I'm continuing to stay in healthcare. I'm in the dental space, and what I've realized is that over time, particularly during the height of the pandemic, dental offices which we support closed down. They closed for several months, and now they're having a problem, really hiring staff, which is a fairly new phenomenon for them. And so you have to really put yourselves in the mind of whoever your customer is. In every business or opportunity, right, there's always a customer that you're serving, right? At the end of the day, that's you have to figure out a way to get close to that customer and to understand what that customer's pain point is. And whether it's conversation, whether it's observation, whatever method you use. And that's how you really understand how you can best serve that customer, by actually understanding what drives them. And you have to get close to them in any part of the business, in any discipline that you're in, any service. There's always a customer at the other end. In education, right, there's a customer, right, for sure. And really understanding the needs of your customer will make you a better employee, business owner, teacher, professor, whatever it is, by understanding their needs. And so dental needs, I'll close the loop, needs of dentists and dental offices were they needed the ability to do things that they would normally have done, schedule appointments, answer the phone, see patients faster with less people. And so in this case, we had to bring out software that helped them do that. And that's what met their needs. And so, and because they had less people, they just could not hire. The pandemic took a lot of, in that case, mostly moms who were mostly at the time the ones that were dental assistants and office managers, right? Some dads, but mostly moms. It took them out of the workforce for a period of time. And a lot of them said, you know what, I'm going to continue. I'm not going to go back. And so understanding that need, talking to my own dentist, understanding what was going on was really, really insightful to me, and continues to be to this day.
Yeah. Are you still involved in like branding and development as far as, branding goes?
Yeah, no, correct. Yes, I am. Part of my role is, as I bring out new software offerings to dental practices, is making sure that we have the branding that's aligned with other brands in the portfolio. So it makes sense, again, to the customer. It actually has to really and there's a map that you put up that really has, here's the master brand of the company, and here's how all the brands interrelate. And so deeply involved in that, also involved, and really in many cases, the driver of product development efforts, new product development folks. I don't do software development. I don't write code, but I give, and my team, we give direction to those developers as to what to build. And so you have to have a clear understanding of what the brand is, or what the end is in mind, and before they start developing. Otherwise, you end up with what's called throwaway code, which you don't want. You don't want to take code that someone spent 2 months building and end up not using it. So you want to avoid that at all costs.
So that brings me to the question that I had about, and I'll turn it over to you in a minute, Anita, but the idea of, because so many of these girls are third year, they're getting ready to graduate. Is that same idea relevant for personal branding, as far as finding your own identity within the field that you want to go in? Could you just talk about personal branding a little bit? Because you've been so helpful to me in my past employability classes and resume building.
Yeah, no, it's great. Personal branding is key. And what I'll tell you, developing a personal brand, you really have to think about not just what I want my brand to be, but as what I want people to remember me as. I meet someone, how do I want them to think about who I am? And what I would say is never, or I won't say never, try to avoid this concept of just fitting in and being just like everyone else. That's a trap that I've fallen into for a while as well, right? Where I don't want to stand out. I just want to just be just like everyone else. And I don't want to have any attention per se put on me or stand out. And, and there's a flip side of that of being, oh, it's all about me, right? So there's a balance that you have to have, but making sure that you try to create a memorable encounter with every person that you meet, right? That memorable encounter, looking somebody in the eye, right? I mean, the basics. I mean, you don't have to stand on the table and say, right? But the basics, looking somebody in the eye, really waiting, when you say, how are you? Waiting for an answer, a firm handshake, the basics, you'd be surprised because these days you don't see that often, right? And so being very, very, those things make you very, very memorable. What I would also tell you, and this is something I was reflecting on last night, that's really part of your personal brand, is that your word is so important. Your word is, in many cases, all that you have. And so if you have a point where you communicate, hey, I'm going to do something, right? Actually do it. And if you can't do it, which is fine because situations occur, then explain, here's why I can't do it, and be forthcoming, do unto others, right? If you can't do it, you wouldn't want somebody to wait until the last minute to tell you, hey, I can't make this happen, and then put you in a situation. And people will remember how you handle a situation more than the situation itself. And that really plays into your personal brand, is how you actually handled it versus, I can't believe we didn't get this done. It's, hey, Anita couldn't get this done, but my goodness, I mean, she told me so far ahead of time, and she really was forthcoming and honest and came forward and really she kept her word in keeping me informed. And I really appreciate that. That's what they'll remember. And so that's what I have to say about branding. Personal branding is not complex. Do the basics and then make sure that you are managing your word and your reputation, because that's many cases what propels you, and how people 5-10 years later, right, that have an opportunity that you're perfect for, think about you. Oh, I remember that person. They were great. They didn't always get it right, but they handled themselves very well.
And they kept their word.
And they kept their word.
Yeah. I didn't set that up. For those of you who were at Reader's Theater Friday night, remember the spell that I said I didn't set this up for him, but thank you. That is really, that's a long story. I have to tell you about that another time.
Yeah, I look forward to it.
Anita?
Yeah, thank you. I was listening to you saying that we have to think of me, but then sometimes even that can get lonely.
Mm-hmm.
So, because it's when we focus on the self, we automatically then zone out everybody else.
Mm.
How does that, I mean, I know it is helpful, but then how do we find the balance?
I'll tell you how I do it, right? I try to, with everybody that I work with, or I will work with, I try to find a personal connection, just a few minutes, just every so often, every day. If I'm on the phone a large portion of the day now, and before a meeting starts, hey, by the way, how was that event you went to over the weekend? And that goes into listening. Okay, if you go back to an earlier comment, people, if you're asking someone how they're doing, what do you have plans this week, and you make a note of it, and you come back later on and you ask them, they think, wow, this person actually listened to me. It wasn't just, hey, how you doing? It was, they waited for an answer, I shared, and now I've established a personal connection. One of the things, I'll give you an example as well. I have a fair amount of colleagues in the UK, and as soon as I heard of Queen Elizabeth's passing, I sent a note out to them because I know that they were very, very fans of the monarchy. And they so appreciated that because they were at a point where they were hurting, whatever, and I couldn't relate, right? Being in the States, I couldn't relate to being hurting for an ailing monarch, but they were so appreciative of that personal connection that transcended all business. And I gave them, a day or two, right, to really not ask them a bunch of business questions because I knew as a community that they were having challenges. But just making a point, I guess the theme is make a point to make a personal connection, an authentic, that's the key word, an authentic personal connection with every single person. You don't have to do it every day, but just once in a while.
Yeah.
Understand what's going on in some, and that's really, that's made the difference. And, the hardest time to do it is with, like your senior leader or your boss or what have you, but still take that opportunity to do that because it does pay dividends and it's a lot, but it has to be authentic.
Yeah.
It can't be, I'm reading a checklist of how was your weekend? It needs to be authentic and you need to have some interest, and you'd be surprised what you learn as well, just by doing that about people and what drives them.
Yeah, that's beautiful. In fact, it's like you've studied psychology as well.
I haven't. I wish I had though. No.
Anita is our resident psychologist. And but that and maybe this is a good time to ask the question about language, because we are a language center. Our motto is empowering connection through language.
I
And
love it.
so just the fact that you just said one of the ways to balance the me attitude with in other words, the small story and the big picture, which Anita and I were just talking about before the session came up. How important in that and in your position is language?
So what I would tell you is, and I would say not just in my position, but in any position, right? It's really sensitivity to language, and not just language, but language and culture is critical. It's absolutely critical. If you're not sensitive to language, you're going to have a miscommunication. And what I've realized, most business disputes and personal disputes, for that matter, that occur are due to miscommunications. Okay. And I would say is that even in a mostly English-speaking environment, right, where I speak English, you speak English, all my colleagues speak English, there's still miscommunications that happen that are significant, either due to language or culture. And so my role, specific to my role is to launch products, introduce products that are in line with a dental practices environment. So if you're in Southern California, right, and you're a dental office, you're going to have English, you're going to have Spanish. You have a huge Filipino community. If you're in Canada, you will have English and French, and the French is a little different in Quebec than it is in France. And I'm sure, in a country as large as India, there are very specific requirements depending on what region that you're in. And so I would say it's critical, and it's critical not just to have a wide sense of I speak 10 languages, right? That's great if you do, but it's important to know what you do not know, and recognize, hey, you know what? I don't know, even within your own country. I don't know what's the life is like in Southern California, what that culture is. So I need to go and find out. A couple of years ago, we did translations, for some product. I don't remember what it was. And we sent it off to a translation agency. and they came back and we took that information that was translated and we put it right into the application. It was totally wrong. It was totally wrong. And it was, Spanish. It was Spanish, English to Spanish, but it was a version of Spanish that was different than the target that we were looking for. And it wasn't the Spanish that was appropriate for healthcare, right? And the agency we sent it to was not a healthcare agency. And so it's critical. And it was, in many cases, right, just depending, it could be, not a big deal, or it could be life-threatening, right? If that language isn't understood properly. And so what I would say is I have a great passion for language learning and language centers for that reason, because the focus just isn't on the language, it's also on the culture as well. And that's so important. So kudos to you all for really, pursuing studies, not just, the disciplines, right, or the sciences, but what I would say is other critical areas as well. You think about scientists who come together and they try to speak a common language, and they spend plenty of time going over and over again to make sure that the person that they're communicating to understands what they're saying, even if they're both speaking English. Because if you don't do that, a miscommunication can happen. And so, yeah, that's what I would have to say about that role of language. I think it's how you asked the question.
All right, thanks. Well, we wanted to get a little bit personal, just a little. Before we go, there is a question in the chat, and we'll save that for a minute. But and actually, Anita asked this question better than I ever do. But obviously, you've had setbacks, obstacles, failures. Could you tell us how you handle those setbacks and failures in your life?
Yeah, I mean, you're always going to have obstacles and failures. What I say is, I believe that wherever I am at a particular moment is where I'm supposed to be, right? My faith tells me that, my personal faith tells me that, hey, where you are is exactly where you're supposed to be. And so if I'm trying to pursue something, and there's nothing wrong with pursuing, right? You should go after it. You want to be a whatever it is, right? Product manager, right? I'm putting a plug in, right? Go after it and charge hard to get it. But if it doesn't work out and you end up doing something else, that's where you're supposed to be. And so I try not to dwell on the failures. I know I will fail. What's interesting is we have something that we say in the business world. It's important to fail quickly. If you're going to fail quickly. And if you launch a new product and it's not a success and it's going to be terrible, change it, pull it, do whatever, do it quickly, but don't wallow and for a long period of time. But know what it means to know the difference between a failure and just a setback. Yeah, so I'm not sure if I've given you an answer there per se, but I fail, often. But I think it's important. What I will say, going back to a previous theme, it's important if you do fail to own it, to not, point the fingers, hold others accountable if there's a piece of it that was accountable. But I've gotten more credibility out of saying, yeah, these 5 things went wrong in these other departments, but I own it. I've gotten more positive branding from that than, oh, these other people failed and I just can't believe it. So that's what caused the project to fail, right? Mm-hmm. If you own it, hey, I own it. It may be frustrating, it won't feel good at the time, but that is what people will remember, right? They won't remember the failure because, things never go right in business all the time. And as a matter of fact, I think Toyota former CEO said that if you have no problems in your business, then you have very big problems, right? And that's their philosophy, is you always will have something, but how you handle it I own it, is really what folks are going to remember. And so that's what I try to emulate.
Wow, that's wonderful. I was wondering about how you manage work-life balance. It's big nowadays.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I
in
saw
fact,
that.
well, wait, before you answer that, because that's so in line with Hamsini's question. She said, does your job affect your general lifestyle? If yes,
Mhm.
then how? So if you want to take both of those at the same time, but yes, work-life balance that's like buzzwords these days. Yeah.
And especially since we had World Mental Health Day on the 10th of October,
Mhm.
following
No,
from that, yes.
for sure. So what's interesting is I don't know if the term work-life balance is an appropriate term, because to me it's all life, right? Work is part of life, and you have to dedicate what you have to hold dear to what you have important. So I give you an example, right? And this is coming to mind, so I could mess this up. So forgive me, give me a little grace here. But and I forget her name, but the CEO or former CEO, I don't remember, of PepsiCo, is of Indian descent.
Right.
And I remember watching I think it was a podcast, or listened to a podcast, or an interview with her, and she was asked that question, and it resonated with me. And it was about work-life balance. And she said something similar to that, but what she said is that the areas or the priorities that you have that you will not compromise on, make those known and don't compromise. If you choose to, I'm going to be at my kid's soccer game, the final game of the season, I'm going to be there because my son or daughter is playing and it's going to be great, or what have you, make that known and don't compromise on that. And that's how she, in her case, right? I mean, you can imagine, like, global CEO flying all over the world, always out of office. That's how she accomplishes work-life balance in her version. Every day at 7 p.m., I will talk to my children and I will spend 30 minutes reading to them. Don't compromise on it, right? That's with rare exception, right? With rare exception, make that known that those are the areas, those are my non-negotiables. And to me, and you communicate that to your family, to your friends, to your kids, like, hey, you know what? On Friday nights are my evening. I will not do anything on Friday evenings. That's my family time. And so after 5 p.m., you will not get me, right? And make it a non-negotiable. And so those are the areas that help you get a sense of control. If you have a job that's more challenging, then it's even more important to carve out those pieces of time that you do it, that you have with your family and friends, or whatever you're passionate about. So, to me, work-life balance is just a part of life. What I would say is to find roles, and there's a sort of a question that's not asked, right? That maybe you guys were going to ask is, how do you, the whole doing the job that you love, right? We've all heard that, right? Do the job that you love and you'll never be bored, right? And what I would say is that sometimes you don't have the luxury of doing the job that you love. I love to travel. I cannot get a job, traveling to hotels all over the world and doing like luxury hotel reviews, right? I'm not going to get that job. But what you can do is make sure that whatever role or career that you have enables you to follow your passion, gives you either the flexibility to follow your passion a couple times a year if you want to travel, give you the ability to go and do that. So you might not go into business for yourself in a company with a job or with a business that requires you to be there 365 days a year, right? You may not do that if you like to travel. And so I don't know if you can always do what you love to do. Yeah. But what you should make sure that you do is that whatever you're doing allows you to follow your passion one way or the other.
So I'm going to interject here because I teach a lot of employability classes. And when I talk about these things that are non-negotiables, many of these young students will say to me, I don't have that choice. There are too many people in India and not enough jobs. And how can I have non-negotiables? I think myself, maybe it has a little bit to do with mindset also. I mean, I can do anything for a short period of time if I want to try something out or if I want to do, but what do you say about that thought of, wow, it's how can we have non-negotiables? There are just too many people and not enough jobs.
So you can always work toward getting to the job situation that you'd like to be in. Okay, there's nothing wrong, to your point, right? You can do anything for a short period of time, right? And I've had some very, very awful jobs that I knew were a propel point to something greater. And as a matter of fact, my very first job at Kimberly-Clark wasn't the job that I wanted, right? But I knew I wanted to get into the company because I knew I could really shape a career there. And so I did it for, the better part of a year. And it really paid off for me. And I got to the place where I could have non-negotiables. And so I would say starting out, it will be tough and you will have to, but have a plan to understand, okay, here's what I'd like to do. I'm making up something. I like to ski on the weekends, right? Something. And so because I like to ski on the weekends, where I ultimately want to get to, I want to go to that department because that department has hours that give me free time during the day to ski. I mean, I'm making it up, but you can do it. To your point, Vicki, you can do anything for a short period of time if it gets you to the point where you can get to the point in your career where you can have those non-negotiables. And if you want to be a leader, that's fine. If you don't want to be a leader, that's fine too, right? Leadership is not for every single person, but you can continue to know what they are and say, okay, I'm going to take this job because this is going to get me to a point where I can go here later on. And so easier said than done. I will concede that, but it's also having a plan and knowing what you're working towards is key. What I find is that folks don't often know where they want to go, where they want to end up, and they're just working to work. Because that's what I do. I go up, I get in, I work all day and I come home. And there's nothing beyond that. And so if you have a plan that says, I'd like to get to a point where I have more balance in my life. I'd like to excel in my career. I'd like to start a family. And those are not mutually exclusive, by the way. Then I need to take these steps. I need to save this much. I need to get into this field. Whatever it is, just always have steps in mind that will help you get there. And what I would do also is what I've learned, and even to this day, I'm still amazed by just sharing what you'd like to do with colleagues and friends and colleagues and people that you meet. I'm often surprised how much those things tend to come back, 5 years later. Hey, you told me that you were interested in something like this 5 years ago, and I had an opportunity come up, let's talk about it. And so just sharing what your plans are and being a good listener for others' plans, right? That's the authenticity piece, right? Is really, really helpful and has been helpful to me in identifying new opportunities that are in line with the lifestyle that I want.
Before we go back to the lifestyle thing, I just want to make sure I ask you, do you have any regrets about your career?
I don't. I mean, maybe there are a few times that, should I have pushed a little bit harder to get to this new role, or should I have, worked over the weekend a little bit more to to get ready, for that big meeting. You always have something like that, right? But there's no major regret. I probably wish I had studied more in undergraduate than I did. I tell you,
Good
because
word for these
uh,
undergraduates, yes.
yeah, I wish I had studied more in my undergraduate time. And actually, I could take that back to high school because I didn't do as much as I would have done in high school. And then I ended up having to work that much harder in college, and yeah, I didn't, right? And then it's only when I decided to go to graduate school that I said, okay, I've got to really buckle down and really do my absolute best, because this is a lot of money. And so it was like almost like my second opportunity to go out there. So I would say that's my only regret, as I'm helping my kids with their math as of late, and their math is like over my head. I'm paying for it.
So the master's degree did have a purpose in your life, even though it wasn't just for the degree name. It maybe got you more on track, or?
It got me more on track, and it gave me a sense of how to work with others in a team environment to get a project accomplished.
Okay.
Right. And really, it's established a network for me. And, I tell you this, right now, for all of you that are students here, right? I mean, this group of people that's on this call, this is your network. These are the folks that whether you like them or not, right? This is your network of folks that you will, that you have a shared experience with, that if you go out into the world, you will be able to reach back to and help them, and then conversely help you make an introduction or tell you about a role or what have you. And so take that seriously. That network is really, 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 really critical. And my undergraduate network is important. My graduate network is important. Everyone you work with.
Your language center network.
Yeah, you're exactly. Have a great LinkedIn page and connect with them and check on them every so often, and have a group that you all can, have some banter every so often, right? If you can't connect live, I mean, but that network is so important. And so don't take it for granted. And I probably realized that later than most, but I'm glad I did eventually.
Anita, do you have any more questions before we go to the audience?
I think we can go to the audience, even though I do have, but then I'm quite mindful of time as well.
Okay, so I want to go back to Hampsini's just in case there's anything you want to add, Lon. Does your job affect your lifestyle, your general lifestyle? If yes, how?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. My job is like anyone else. It's, I would love to, often just be on a beach, right, relaxing. Right? But obviously there's work to be done, and it does impact my lifestyle. But what I would say is my job also enables my lifestyle. It enables me to take care of a family, to have to own a vehicle and a home, and so it enables the lifestyle that I want. And so you have to, it's a give take. You can't. Every so often, as I think about if I might have a frustrating day, I think about, there's probably someone out there who would love to be in this situation. And so I need to not take it for granted that I have a great job, although difficult and time consuming at times. But you cannot take it for granted. And I'd much rather be in the scenario where I have the role and then turn around and try to fit in or try to, mitigate the impact of that role through, like for instance, for us, right? We still have, my kids are 10 and 11, but we still have a sitter come a couple hours a night just to help them with homework and get backpacks together and so forth, because it's, just a crazy time in our home. I'd much rather have the ability to do that than to not do that. Does that make sense? I may be off track a little bit. I guess it enables the lifestyle, I think is important. So from that perspective, Hansini, it does impact it. I may mispronounce your name, I apologize.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, We're opening it up now to the rest of the audience. You can either raise your hand or you can put your question in the chat, either way, but it's open to ask Lon anything you want to ask him. Okay, Anita, go ahead and ask your question. Maybe people are still thinking.
Lovely. Thank you so much. I mean, I'll wait till someone puts in their question, but in the meantime, so it's marketing, healthcare, law. Are there any discussions that kind of merge, or any kind of discussions at home?
Yeah, so it's interesting you ask that, because marketing and product management, which is, a discipline of marketing. Yes, and one of the things of being an ethical marketer, right, is making sure that you're not misleading, right? Goes back to the communication piece as well, right? Making sure that you're not misleading, making sure that you have clarity in your message and that it's legally appropriate. And so I have, just being around a lawyer for much of the day, I have a very unique perspective as to when things go wrong, how to handle them. And, in our environment, right, in previous roles and even in current roles, we've had things that have gone wrong. And what I would tell you, it goes back to, it's not how about something going wrong legally or what have you, it's how you handle it, right? And it's making sure that you're, living up to your word. What I will give you, I may divert off for a point for a second, how you handle it from a stress perspective, and recognizing that not everyone handles stress the same way. And so being sensitive to that. But yeah, it's, I would say, understand the laws that apply to whatever role you're in, and don't think you need to be the expert, but make sure you know who the expert is that you can reach out to before you make a decision that has consequences, right? Because you are, in many cases, right, I can tell this group, right, you all will be leaders, right? And if you're going to be leaders, one of the areas is the leader doesn't have to know everything, but a leader has to know when to ask if something appropriate to put into the marketplace, or a message is appropriate to say, or a claim is accurate. And, I'm a big believer, right, and I tell this to my team, is as you learn something, go ahead and stick it someplace, label it, put it on a slide, stick it someplace so you can refer back to it later. Never rely on your memory, because you'd be surprised. I have to often refer back to why I made a decision on something 3 years earlier. And generally, I can pull up a slide and say, oh yeah, here's what happened, right? Here's the situation. Here's what we looked at. Here's what we did. And here's why we made that call. And so documenting what you've done and why you've done something is critical. And it also helps with that legal aspect as well, right? Where you're now managing, businesses that have legal repercussions, it will help you with that. And so now that everything is digital, right? You don't have to worry about, using a bunch of paper or printing a bunch of things, right? Just stick it in a slide or some notes and document your reasoning, and it will help you later on with both whatever issue you're having and then future issues you may need to refer back to.
That's really good advice. I have students who prepare a portfolio, and I tell them, that you can add to that, and that's a really good way to keep track of stuff, keep track of accomplishments, keep track of things that you've learned. Yeah. That's
let me tell you, that's so important, the keeping track of accomplishments. And I was very bad at it for a while, but keep a diary of accomplishments that you're proud of, right? Keep that, because it will help you as you're talking about new roles. You'll be surprised, like, wow, I can't believe I did that. Because at the time it was so big, but then you forget, And keeping that diary of things that you did will help you with resume writing. It will help you updating your resume. It'll help you in interview questions, because some of the interview questions get pretty detailed, so tell me about a particular issue. And if you forget, right, you lose the ability to showcase something about yourself that's unique and different. So keeping that diary is very, very important. Even if it's something that's trivial at the time, I keep a Word document, and every year I just change it, right? I just call it, I forget the name of it, but it's like Lon's, winning something or the other, right? 2022, right? And just write it in there. And for a while, if you have a lot going on, you can keep it, keep the document open and just keep on adding to it as you go. But it really helps. It helps with performance reviews as well. Performance management these days, you actually are basically assessing yourself against your objectives. And so being able to go back and refer to, okay, what are the things that I did that helped us towards these goals? You need to have that recollection, and I wouldn't trust anything to memory anymore. So documenting is important for a whole host of reasons.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. That was beautiful. Very, very handy, I must say. Each of the tips that you've shared, the recommendations, each one.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I mean, I feel like there's a question out there still that someone's holding back on asking. So I want to, we have a few minutes left. Is there anything at all? It may not be it may be one like, oh, I don't want to ask that, but I really do, just go for it. I'm an open book. There you go. I see a hand.
Vidya.
Vidya.
Please go ahead.
Hello. Actually, I'll go ahead and ask this question because I want to let this out of my system. It's actually, I'm doing my bachelor's in education after completing my bachelor's in English, political science and economics, and my friends are doing masters. So, it happens that I doubt myself, even though I'm having fun in what I'm doing. I doubt that what if what they are doing is correct, and what if my decision is wrong. And I know my I had to make my decision because this is something that I made this decision myself. It was not put on me. But I just feel like when it will come from a professional side, how can I stop doubting myself? How can I stop comparing myself? I just cannot stop doing it. I'm having fun in whatever I'm doing, but still I have that question coming up, and that really disturbs me sometimes.
Yeah, no. And what's interesting is, what I will tell you is that, and going back to a previous comment, every single person's path is radically different. There are CEOs of major companies that barely finished high school. Okay, right? Barely finished. I don't know what the high school equivalency is where you are, but barely got out of school. And there are people who've got doctorate degrees and who are out into the world who have not accomplished nearly as much. And so what I would tell you is, a lot of your success, education is important. I will not tell you that. A lot of your success will be based on experience, and it will be based on some of those other factors that we talked about. Being authentic, building relationships, making connections, truly authentic connections. You're not being afraid to network, making sure that you're memorable, right? Which I can tell you right now, you are. I can see it, right? Just by your question, right? You've made an impression on me just off the bat because you said, hey, I want to get this off my chest, right? Which means that there's a sense of a burden that you're having, and that's being vulnerable to share that. And so all those other factors matter. Education is one leg of a 5-legged stool, right? That you have to put into context. But I can tell you, I've gotten roles over people who are way more qualified than I was on paper, way more qualified. I can think of one actually right now because we were friends and we were both going for the same role, and he thought he was a shoo-in, right? And I got the role because of those other factors. And so please view yourself as a package, right? And not just one particular part of the package. You're an entire package that you're going to communicate your value to, employers, to and other opportunity that you have available to you. Okay, so focus on strengthening all the other areas and making those authentic connections and sharing your story, sharing what you'd like to do, where you'd like to go, and you will be successful, I guarantee.
Thank you so much, sir. That's really very helpful.
Thank you.
Thank
all.
you.
That was a great answer and a great question, Vidya. All right, we have 2 minutes left. Manish, are you sure you don't have a question, Manish?
No, ma'am.
No? Okay.
I have no questions, Lon, but I must say I'm so fascinated, so fascinated with the way in which you answered all the pointed questions by Vicky and Anita. I especially liked the point where you said that when somebody asked you about work-life balance, you spoke about listing out priorities and make those priorities non-negotiable. I think it was wonderful. It's advice that should go out to everyone. Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you, Nalini. Yeah, it's not that you're not going to have things that pull you in different directions, but
Yes.
there are a few things that rise to the top, and make those. I mean, I want to be there for my child's birth. It's non-negotiable. There are people who have forgotten that for work, and
Right.
if that's your non-negotiable, not anything wrong with it if it's not your non-negotiable, but
Yes.
this really works out that way. So thank you, Nalini.
Yes. And when you spoke about changing jobs and every change brings about opportunities, I agree with that totally. But in India, I don't think we have that privilege because jobs don't come so easily. So when we joined in our careers, our parents used to tell us, now you've got a job, you stick with it, whether you like it or not. So times have changed, of course, and perspectives have changed as well.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And you can always, and I've done this before as well, you can always make the job that you have the job that it has the potential to be, right?
Yes.
And the opportunity, and that's part of the value. You know what, I'm doing this, but it could be this, right? And you almost bring your supervisor or your boss along for the ride with you.
I love that last line. Yeah, I love that. I love that.
Yes.
I mean, things are
That's
different.
great.
Nalini, I mean, I'm from your generation where we should keep a job for a long time. My son's been graduated from college for, let's see, 29 to 3 years, and he's on his 4th job.
Wow.
And it's been,
Wow.
and it's been like a ladder, I mean, it's pretty, I mean, it's very different. Yes. But
Yes,
it's also
and-
different in different countries. So I don't
Right,
want,
right.
I don't
And
want.
it changes also from generation to generation. In my generation, when we showed the change of jobs in our resume, it meant that we are not stable people.
Yeah, that's
We keep
right.
changing all the time. But today, that it's not perceived in that way. A resume should reflect many changes,
Yeah.
that
Do you-
shows
whether
your
that-
upward
Do you
rise.
agree with that, Lon?
Yeah, I think, and changes can be within the same company or organization as well, right?
Yes,
Being well-rounded in one company is, to me, equally as effective as having different companies on your resume. And the fact that you're well-rounded and you can do different, you can have different areas of expertise within the same organization gives
Right.
you a unique sense of value, if that's the type of organization that you're in, that you can do.
right, that's true. And in India, if it is a government job, then you're advised never to change it.
Ah,
Just
yes, I've heard that
Because the-
before, yeah.
I
The
can see that.
post-retirement benefits are there. So
Oh,
just
right.
stick.
Well, that goes back to letting you go after your passions and giving you the
Yes.
opportunity to do other things, right?
I do
That's
want to
great.
ask real quick before everybody leaves, if you could turn on your video so we could take a picture for Lon for his,
Oh, that'd be great. Thank you.
or a little souvenir. So if everybody could please turn your video on. There, now you can see Vidya and Salishma. There's Pramila. Thank you, Hamsini. Navya, Satya. Okay, hold on. Anita, are
Awesome.
you taking a picture also? Because my names always go off when I do my screenshot. Okay, 1, 2, 3. All right, thank you all very much. Thank you all for
Thank you.
coming.
Thank you very
Lon, for
much.
your time. I know
Thank
that.
you, Lon. Thank you, Anita.
One thing we
Thank you.
didn't get to ask him, what does a normal day look like? Well, actually, let's see. What time is it there in Atlanta now?
9:03 a.m.
9:03 a.m. Are you working from home or are you going in somewhere?
Today I'm working from home. I may go in maybe once a week, but I do work from my home office
Okay.
nowadays. And so I have a meeting starts in about 10 minutes. And so
Good.
and we'll have a couple meetings throughout the day. And then in the afternoon, I usually get some work time to work on some projects. But there's always something, and every day is different.
Well,
Every day
thank
brings
you.
something new. Yes.
Yeah,
There you go. And but this has been a pleasure starting off the day with you all. This is something I'm glad we're able. Vicky and Anita, thank you for having me and pulling this together. This was the highlight of my day. I am sure of it.
all right.
Thank
Thank
you. Thank you.
And then I would say happy Diwali to all of you. I think that's coming up next week.
Yes,
Yes.
a week from today, actually.
So all the happiness and prosperity to your family and to you all for everything that brings. Okay, so
Thank you.
Thank
And
Thank you, Lon. To you too. To you too.
So much.
Thank you.
See all of you.
bye-bye. Thank you for having me.
thank you so much.
Thank you.